You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would now call to order the meeting of the directors of the Empire State New Market Corporation for Monday, March 18th, 2024. I'd like to note for the record that this meeting is being webcast and I will be the acting chair for today's meeting. I've also note for the record that the public was given the opportunity to comment on the agenda by submitting their written comments by 5 p.m. Friday, and I'd like to say for the record that no comments were received. The directors have received the relevant written materials in advance of today's meeting and are free to ask questions at any time. Before we begin with the substantive portion of the meeting, I'd ask the directors whether anyone has any potential conflict of interest with respect to any of the items on the agenda. If so, I would ask you to please make an appropriate disclosure on the record at this time, and we will then be sure that you recuse yourselves from any discussion or vote with regard to such items. Hearing none, the first item on today's agenda is approval of the minutes from December 18th, 2023 directors meeting. Are there any questions, comments, additions, or deletions?
No.
If not, I would entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. I would like to call on John Evan Hornsby to present the final item on today's agenda, which is the approval of the corporation's operating budget for fiscal year 24-25. John Evan.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin, and good morning, everyone. New York State finance law requires that prior to the commencement of each new fiscal year, the directors of Empire State New Market Corporation adopt an annual operating budget. Approval is hereby requested for the proposed fiscal year 2024-25 operating budget. ESMC was incorporated in 2004 for the purpose of applying for an allocation of federal New Markets tax credits from the Department of Treasury's Community Development Financial Institutions Fund. ESNMC has received 4 allocations of NMTCs from the CDFI fund to date, totaling $180 million, including consecutive awards in the 2021 and 2022 rounds, amounting to $45 million and $50 million, respectively. ESNMC is deploying the allocations consistent with the related NMTC applications and allocation agreements with the CDFI fund. In December 2023, ESNMC submitted an NMTC allocation application requesting a new $63 million allocation. ESNMC is currently awaiting notification from the CDFI fund regarding that application. ESNMC continues to service its closed transactions and expects to deploy its current NMTC allocations during the 2024 and 2025 calendar years. The directors are thus presented with the proposed operating budget for fiscal year 2024-25. It is to be noted that ESMC revenue comes from fees charged on transactions. In fiscal year 2022-23, ESMC revenue was approximately $842,000. In fiscal year 2023-24, ESMC revenue is projected to be approximately $1.6 million. And in fiscal year 2024-25, ESMC revenue is projected to be approximately $2.1 million, primarily from fees from newly closed transactions. If ESMC receives a new 2023 round NMTC allocation, then fiscal year 2024-25 revenue is likely to be even higher. In addition to the expenses funded by fees ESMC receives from transactions, ESMC incurs certain transaction-specific consulting expenses that are paid by borrowers directly from transaction closing proceeds. Such expenses and the reimbursements associated therewith have been excluded from this budget. The proposed fiscal year 2024-25 operating budget of $939,864 includes $423,000 of expenses related to personal services, $400,000 of consulting expenses for ESMC's consultant, Rise Community Capital, for preparation of a 2024 NMTC allocation application and assistance with allocation deployment, and $100,000 for legal and accounting services associated with closed NMTC transactions. The remaining $16,864 is projected for insurance and other non-personal services. The directors are requested to approve the proposed fiscal year ESMC operating budget for 2024-25. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, John Evan. Any questions or comments from the directors?
John Evan, I'm sorry if you don't have this information on hand. The previous year, 23-24, operating budget is about $400,000. In the previous years, is the operating budget around $400,000 as well?
In the previous year, it has been around $400,000.
So 22, 23, about 400 as well?
For the total operating budget?
In the previous year, not last year, but 2 years ago.
2 years ago, it was a little bit lower. I think it was $300,000 2 years ago. So we've ramped it up a little bit for consulting services, and also for personal services. We've also increased it.
Okay, and then there's a jump this year because of the additional personnel services.
Primarily for personal services, yes. So we're looking to add 2 additional positions for NMTC accounting person, a staff accountant, and also for a program associate, and potentially compensation for other roles as well. But the significant ramp up in operations for ESMC over the last few years, it warrants a lot more assistance.
Okay, so if we weren't to increase the budget by the personnel services, you would be asking for an additional $100,000.
Approximately, yeah. We just entered into a new agreement with our consultants, and our compensation structure had been pretty much flat for the past 8 years with them, which has been great. But they're due additional money, and sure, they're going to get that for the work that they're doing.
Okay. Thank you.
John Evan, on the consulting fees, does the consultant get I thought they got a percentage of the projects closed, or some commensurate to the work, some amount that increases commensurate with the work. Is that right?
That's correct. So with each application, when we apply, they get a fee for applying once we close, and then we actually give them a fee if we're successful. So they get kind of two fees related to application, and then with deployment, they receive 1.2% of our fees for closing a transaction. So we receive 4% for each closed transaction. They receive 1.2% of that fee. So that's how they get compensated for deployment. So there's 2 ways that they're compensated.
So they get a closing fee, they get a fee for when we receive an allocation, and how is this $400,000? How does that fit into those 2 fees?
Sure. So it's an assumption that we're going to be closing probably between 40% of our existing $50 million allocation and about 50% of our existing $45 million allocation. So if we're successful in closing those, in addition to potentially being successful with receiving a 2023 award, then that's kind of how we got to the $400,000.
So this is part of their current structured fee. This just sets a number for us to pay via this budget for that for the fee structure that already exists. It's not an additional $400,000 on top of the other fees.
No. It's not additional.
And then in terms of the 423 that you said was potentially an accounting and a program associate.
Yes, potentially a program associate for NMTC, ESMC specifically, and then a staff accountant for accounting specific to NMTC.
And potentially provision for other compensation, because that's a pretty high number for two folks, so.
Correct, yeah.
It's not just strictly two people, right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
Yes. And
Just to
then
be
fringe
sure
benefits
people
are
are
also
clear.
included in that
Yeah.
as well.
Got it. But this
It's two
doesn't
permanent
have
headcount.
I'm sorry, Paul, go ahead.
So it's 2 permanent headcount and then possibly a portion of other, portions of people who are ESD that some of their salaries goes to the subsidiary, comes from the subsidiary.
Correct, yes.
Sorry, Kevin.
No. All right. Got it. This just gives us the ability to do those things if we need to do them, or ultimately how we decide to do them. Got it. Okay. Any other questions from the directors?
No.
All right. As noted earlier, we do not have comments from the public, and I would entertain a motion for approval.
I'll move it.
I'll
Second.
second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. I want to thank everybody for participation in today's meeting. There being no further business, I would call for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Motion carried. Thank you. Thanks all for your time. Have a good one.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.